All right, good evening, friends. Forgive me for looking downwards, but I need to know where that button is for me to transition to the current video and make that other video end. But anyways, guys, today we have an interesting topic about how to make peace between Russia and America. Why are we talking about it? Because I was supposed to give a speech on December 5th or 6th, I don't remember. But I am very, very soon, like super soon, going to St. Petersburg, so I can't sort of do both. And the topic of the speech, the inviting party was that whole Russophile movement, which is a pretty prestigious honor. But unfortunately, the man's got to make that cash, got to film those travel videos. So unfortunately, I couldn't do it. But the topic that is the overall topic, not just of what they wanted me to talk about, but all the guests, especially foreign guests, is sort of the overall how to make peace between Russia and America. This sort of age-old topic, which Russians usually kind of formulate in a weird way. They don't say how to make peace. I think they more would have said it in Russian, something to the effect of like, what's the cause of the tensions between Russians and Americans? Why is there this lack of understanding or something? There's always sort of this hint that we really should be getting along, but there's some sort of misunderstanding that's not allowing us to get along. That's kind of like the first hint. And then the second hint is sort of related to the idea that this is some sort of problem between like normal people, between the masses. And this is why, guys, on this topic, I kind of want to talk to you because I want to hear your thoughts. If you have any ideas how to really create peace between Russia and the United States, I'd like to hear them because, to be honest, I don't. And that's not to say that I'm rejecting the concept in some sort of jingoistic way. Like, of course, there's going to be war. Let's kill each other. No. It's not like that. It's just more that I think that, again, and for all these years I've worked in the media, we're talking over a decade, Russians are still convinced that it's some sort of problem between the masses, and it's really not. Because, first off, the masses are kind of the people who have to go fight the wars. And so, in general, even if people don't like each other, the average person that would have to pick up a gun and go fight is probably going to vote for peace. You have to remember that, like a good example was that Zelensky, at least that's what everyone says, one of the reasons he was able to clearly win the election that made him president is because he promised to not have a war with Russia. So despite the fact that there definitely is who really knows what's going on after all the deaths and people leaving, but in the conditions that Zelensky found himself in, there was definitely the rise of an anti-Russian nationalism in Ukraine on a very large scale. And yet, when push comes to shove and you have to go actually fight someone to the death, being passively racist is so much easier. It's a lot easier to be racist online and really hate people with your keyboard rather than having to risk your life and go kill said group of people. So that's also one thing if you're worried about like how people are like, always say human beings are bent on their own destruction. No, they're really not. If you generally kind of look at the history of war, we generally don't really wipe everyone off the face of the earth in a war. I think that's something that's beyond our programming. I think we tend to decimate each other. Decimate meaning 1/10 of us of killing the other side, and then we kind of give up. Even in some of the most horrible and brutal wars, there was still really no like total elimination. In fact, if you think about what the sort of the plans of the Third Reich were, was a bit of an anathema in terms of human history. So, anyways. Long story short, we can be a little bit optimistic that human beings don't really want to fight each other to the true bitter end between two sides. But anyways, going back to our topic about like how to make peace, I wish I knew a way that I could convince Russians to stop asking the question, stop formulating this question, especially to me over and over and over again, as if this was some sort of problem again between the normies, when it isn't. It's about, interests and greater. I'll put it this way: if the people in Washington that seem to be just this endless source of global misery, thanks to the foreign policy that they shove the United States into, I'll put it that way. If these people were to one day wake up and go, okay, we're either going to leave or give up, or this whole multipolar world thing is, basically they give up on the whole global hegemon stuff, then that's really what would end it. This is really the problems between Russia and... Oh, but I should... Hold on, before I get into that, I also have to say that there's definitely a sort of other side of geopolitics that says that, we go back to the whole Mackinder thing, that Russia is like the global heartland of Eurasia, and so it's always going to be seemingly surrounded by the sea empires, and that there's always going to be this natural tension between this global heartland and the sea empires. I don't know, maybe, but I actually would say that, in all honesty, I think geography could really work towards peace, pending the United States would kind of give up on Western Europe. If the United States sort of just let Western Europe go, or who knows, dug a ditch from the northeastern tip of Poland all the way down to, I guess, the Aegean Sea or whatever the heck's down there. Who knows, the Bosphorus Strait, something like that. And to create just a big old river and separate themselves from the rest of the Eurasian landmass. There's really probably a lot more geographic reasons not to fight between the United States and Russia because of the massive distance, because of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. It's really, again, this whole goofy plot to create some sort of globalist world, and, as Alex Jones would say, that it's really this globalist mission. In fact, who's just said it recently, that they were like, the one problem is that the United States has so many land bases on the Eurasian landmass that it really can't protect if something goes wrong. And that's exactly part of it. Like, look at the costs of the Iraq and Afghanistan war. Hold on, guys. I'm getting there. I know I'm a little bit all over the place, but I'm getting there. But essentially, the wealth that America had in 1991 and the total absolute, economic and geopolitical and military and technological dominance that it had, how are we able to completely burn through that in 30 years? And in fact, we've probably burnt through that actually before. Well, because it is, the geography makes it really hard to fight and maintain all these very distant bases across oceans. So I think the geopolitical factor, I think that Russia and America have a lot of tension in this current phase. Because remember, the Cold War, you sort of had side A and side B, and every time a country joins one side, that means it doesn't join the other side. So that was a different situation. I'm talking about the modern, current situation that we're in. It kind of actually, the geography of things, the distances, the oceans and all that, especially if Western Europe wasn't part of the equation, really factor peace. They really do, because they're so far away. I mean, if you think about it, where are there tensions? There's always tensions between India and China because of these weird little divots around the border. There's always going to be tensions between different peoples within Eastern Europe, that's for sure. We can see, again, this sort of triangle of hatred between the Koreans, the Chinese, and the Japanese. For century upon century, there's always more tension between your neighbors, between the people you really know and may have a lot of bad blood with. Whereas, with the United States, it's so far away from Russia that if it wasn't for, I think, the freak, very unlikely set of circumstances that put the United States as the total and only global hegemon, if it wasn't for that, there'd be really no reason for the United States and America to fight. In fact, one of the reasons that Russians kind of feel betrayed by America, because, the Russians supported the North in the Civil War and generally supported more or less the United States, even from its sort of colonial upbringings on some level or another, was because if in those geopolitics of that time, even though the word didn't exist and people didn't think that way, first off, anything bad for Britain could be considered good for Moscow. If we go back to especially the 1800s, that is definitely Definitely a lot of uh, imperial ambitions between Russia and Britain. But besides that, when Western Europe used to be powerful, you could think about it sort of being sandwiched in a way in the Northern Hemisphere with Russia on the one side and then the great United States and its sort of North American empire on the other side of it. So, in a lot of ways, when Western Europe was like a big deal and it was really powerful, it actually was sort of maybe a geopolitical boon for the positioning of Russia and the United States to kind of help each other out. And again, when you talk to Russians and they spit the same 20 historical facts they were taught in school to you, a lot of them are going to deal with like, hey, don't you guys owe us? We were on your side in the Civil War, man. Like, I don't know. Maybe but again, that's one of those things where it's like maybe you're on the United States' side in the Civil War, but I don't remember massed Russian regiments being invited by Abraham Lincoln to turn the tide against the rebel uprising there in the South. I don't remember any of that stuff there. And in fact, I just recently watched a very interesting podcast that painted a very ugly picture of Abraham Lincoln. So, boy, that Civil War, it wasn't that long ago, but it is full of mysteries and speculations. But anyways, that was just an example of how geography could actually benefit U.S.-Russian relations by hating the Europeans. But anyways, yeah, so we kind of go through history further and further. And again, also now hold on, now I lost my train of thought again. Hold on, we are talking about the why we can't have peace between Russia and America. So the geopolitical factor, isn't it? It is not some sort of misunderstanding like the Russian media insists. I think it could even be a conspiracy, guys, because I think it is a cultural thing to think that way, that this is some sort of personal problem, but it's been so consistent. It's like every talk show that it really, I don't know. It's hard to believe that something so organic could be so solid and continuous and repeating. But anyways, it's not those two factors. And I really think that it's got to be then sort of just a factor of this globalist mission. I mean, the real path to peace is getting rid of the globalist mission. Well, what does that mean? What would that mean, getting rid of the globalist mission? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is always violence, because violence is easy. But that kind of violence, what would that look like? Nuclear war, that's not going to work out good for anybody. Does that mean mass sort of clandestine operations to, let's just say, make certain people who believe in these agendas miserable? I don't know. But if there wasn't this belief, because the thing is a lot of the guests I've had on my program and a lot of people I've listened to on other podcasts are really of the belief that the people in Washington legitimately believe in like the American exceptionalism stuff and I don't. I think that they really believe in some sort of globalist vision and that they actually despise the United States and the people there, and like, they look at things as being some sort of like, we're this, maybe kind of how like the Zionists see things. We're part of this tiny, amazing elite, the chosen few, and we can do whatever we want to anyone else. I think that that's more that their reasoning, how their reasoning works. They just like to dress it up with sort of things like American exceptionalism and, what else? We were the world policemen and the indispensable nation. I think that doesn't come from an honest place. I think that that's sort of a messaging from them to the masses to sort of... it kind of is a way for them to justify what they're doing in a way that Jim Bob watching TV can understand. God dang, we're exceptional. We're the best. We got the most money. I think that that's more of what it is. But so the thing is well, what can you do about this, especially in a peaceful way that doesn't involve assassinations or nuclear war or something else where you have to sort of take people out? What can you do about it? Well, one of the things why there are so many people who believe in this sort of globalist agenda that there's too many people on Earth, and that we need to cull the herd, and the global climate change agenda and all this other stuff. Why do so many of these ultra rich people believe in it? If it could come from their background, that if you have everything and you have this old money mentality, not a new money mentality. There's plenty of people who make a lot of money and lose it, or they are not able to sort of transfer generation to generation. Whereas old money, somehow they're able to instill in their vile children at least the ability to sort of hang on to the wealth, unlike Hunter Biden. But if you have this old world mentality, I can see that in now, given the sort of view of things, the again, oh, thank goodness, I get to say Malthusian. Yeah, Malthusian, my favorite word. So the Malthusian mentality, I think, is very natural when you are one of these rare old money people, where you have a ton of resources. You are super rich, your father was rich, his grandfather. Maybe you're even thinking about your kids, maybe you're thinking of yourself. But when you come from that and you have all this stuff and your life is very stable and you have plenty of time to think, and you're not out there on some dock unloading cages full of lobsters or whatever, you probably have a lot of time to think about the world, and you see that there's so many people, and then you kind of start to think, what about my resources? What about the planet? These useless mouths, as Malthus, I believe, was the one who claimed the term. These useless eating, consuming mouths are going to take away everything from me. And ultimately, it kind of comes from the mentality of the ultra-rich to sort of protect the nest of gold that they're sitting on. And I think that's kind of ultimately what it comes from. It's some sort of maybe survival instinct from the ultra elites that we're going to reorganize the world, and there's going to be like a couple of megacities, and we're going to live in this like Elysium at the top of the megacities, and all these horrible rat people will slowly die out, and the planet will be saved, and there will be enough sort of slave-like rat people to keep me fed and keep the electricity going and all that stuff. That's kind of generally the way the globalists see things. And they also sort of see things in terms that they could basically through by hook or by crook, convince the average person to do the whole like 15-minute city thing and not consume any resources. So they're sort of like a good little obedient mouth that eats very little, whereas the people at the top can continue to eat, be the big mouths and eat sort of as much as they like. It's kind of I don't know, like the big fat kid who goes to the birthday party. Once they open those pizza boxes, hey, if he eats half a pizza by himself, there's no one that can go in his stomach and get it back out. You know what I mean? So I think that that's a little bit of the mentality here. And how does one fight against that? I guess it sort of requires maybe a lot of propaganda. I'm sorry, guys, I can become a bit of a broken record here, but when the circumstances don't change, your opinions don't change. And as I really criticize Russia a lot for, we're not really that great with making our own visions of the future and our own sort of propaganda, or one could say PR, or this, that, or the other. And if some of the world's really, really wealthy, and especially old money wealthy, we're presented some maybe competing visions of the future, or especially like the way reality looks from within Russia, that the situation in the world really isn't that bad. That's another thing that's nice about living here. Like in America, everything is overpopulation is going to lead to starvation, mass war. Like look at this. Probably all of you watch Judge Napolitano. His channel is amazing, but like how every time he has a commercial, it really goes. Despite the fact that Judge Napolitano is so eloquent and calm and clear in his delivery, his advertisers always want him to be like, the end is coming, you've got to invest in gold now. Always apocalyptic, and always with explosions, and always with this, and they're going to take your rights away. And when you live in Russia and you get away from that sort of like information space, even though the messages they're saying about, hey, you want to buy gold? You should be able to buy gold. You should be able to have assets in metals if you want. Hey, freedom. So I'm not saying that the products are bad, but when you go to Russia and overpopulation isn't a thing. In fact, Russia's underpopulated. So underpopulation is the real key crisis. Overpopulation isn't a thing. People aren't worried about resources. Climate change doesn't exist. You see it occasionally on documents, but it's more about, well, are we going to need to build more bases in the Arctic now that it's going to be less Arctic? Are we going to need to develop Norilsk further? What are we going to do about this? It's about like that stuff. So first off, that's one thing that is a good thing about moving to Russia. There's a lot less stress. But if people I don't know, it's kind of hard to teach an old dog new tricks. But let's just say George Soros' kid is abducted in a non-violent way, and he's forced to live in Russia, and somehow, like in Cyberpunk 2077, they put a flash drive in his head, and he downloads the Russian language, and he can understand everything. Who knows, maybe after 5 or 10 years, he would wake up and be like, yeah, the globalist vision isn't really even a thing, because there's competing evidence that all of the things that really push this globalist vision of this exploding global population, there's no resources, and we've got to do this, that, and the other, and we have to do it by paying taxes to bureaucratic institutions that are international, and all the money gets stolen anyways. Like, all that stuff just doesn't exist here. It would really eat away at his perception of all that. And I think another thing, too, is that because the sort of old money Western elites have zero concept or desire to know anything outside of their own very narrow interpretation of history, that's sort of what allows them to be so extremist, because there are no counter arguments. So if we really kind of care about peace, it actually would be creating some sort of alternative vision for the future that especially has some nice scientific fancy pants packaging. Excuse me, I just had to check a very important message there. Come back, live stream, come back. And don't worry, for those of you who want to raise your hand and talk to me, you can do that pretty soon. So don't worry about that. We'll get to that. But yeah, if we were able to really create an alternative narrative that people would actually like grow up with and get used to, and would provide challenging views on all of these fundamental pillars of why the globalist vision looks the way it looks, that would really help. Because I think it is, in a lot of ways, the completely insular mentality of this sort of globalist elite that allows them to have some sort of weird, unquestioning belief system. And it does go back to wealth, because generally, if you think about things too, in the West, you can meet some people who are kind of poor, but also they love the globalist vision. But you can see how very easily they'll be crushed by it. If you raise people to sort of not hate themselves, and see value in humans and human life, and have a different vision of the future, you kind of, I think it's going to be very easy to convince a lot of people out of this vision. Because even in the West, where we're all brought up with this propaganda, the globalist vision is still a minority position. And I think it's always going to be, because it's just very antithetical to human nature, to be like, look, I need to commit suicide so that way a cow can live. Like, people just don't, that's not natural. That's programming. You can only program so many people. So anyways, guys, in sort of in closing here, so I'll get to people's messages, because I see there's messages. Someone's writing. So that's nice, I think. Maybe. Good. Well, someone's arguing there too. But anyways, there are some good comments here, so we'll get to those. But again, in closing, I'm kind of sick of being asked to find some sort of false peace solution between the American and Russian peoples, because there really isn't a problem between the both of us. And again, as I've said it before, I've been laughed at before a million times, and I'll be laughed at even more. If you really want to build some sort of like peace bridge between common American and Russian people, I think it's through American football. But that's just me. But that doesn't matter because we're not the problem. The masses are not the problem and really almost never are. It is the mentality of certain people within the elite who actually have the ability to make U.S. foreign policy nasty and unpleasant and unfortunately very destructive for America as this great idea in society and civilization, but very effective for certain people within America to maintain and expand their own wealth and within the West as a whole. So the problem is not between peoples, and it is also not a problem of geography, as I broke down with a couple historical examples there. It is not some sort of natural geographic battle between Russia and the United States. Again, one thing I kind of touched on but didn't again mention is, remember, there was a lot of tension between the British Empire and the Russian Empire. And there's still tension between London and Moscow now, but it's 100% coming from the London side. Because, England is nothing like what it used to be. Or you could also say, well, if distance doesn't matter, then it's always like, well, what about all the other distant places? Like, one thing that's very good is the Indians have always seen Russia as being awesome, because Russia is kind of near, kind of borders China, who they're always worried about. They see kind of like Russia's this entity that can sort of be played off against the Chinese with certain deals. But it's also kind of far away. So that's one of the benefits. If India and Russia shared a very highly populated border region between each other, and sort of sought similar resources or having influence over similar spheres, things would be different. So again, the geopolitical question is not so black and white, and I think that ultimately it doesn't force the United States and Russia into some sort of natural, inevitable conflict. Again, some sort of natural conflict is going to be Russia versus Western Europe. Because like I said, unfortunately, we can't just dig a river from the Baltic there down to the Aegean Sea. That's not going to happen ever. It would be amazing if we could just click our fingers and put like a nice, 5-kilometer water gap on the east part of Poland. That would be just Jim dandy for everyone. But that's not going to happen. And Russia is always going to be naturally stuck with the consequences of problems from Europe. Unless Europe completely, of course, degrades into some sort of like nothing, just geopolitical total irrelevance. But Europe is always going to be different. It is always going to be a problem because its population, if you look on sort of where the populations are distributed, they're right next to each other. But anyway, so the real problem is this mentality of the elites that creates their desire for these globalist projects, well, and also corruption, because they want to make money off of this grand old military-industrial complex. But in general, it really comes down to the mindset of certain people who I would consider to be the real flag bearers of the old money elites, but new money elites kind of think this way too. And I think that this all sort of comes from a certain mentality, that really a lot of the way things are stem from our mentality. And unfortunately, Russia is not really fighting on this mentality-changing front, especially among these certain people. Like if we could click our fingers tomorrow, again, more magical thinking, and every super elite person in the world would open-mindedly read like some of the books of Dugin about sort of the future and international relations, they might be like, Oh, things are different. Oh, yeah. Maybe not. Yeah, maybe the globalist agenda is not going to work. But they're never going to do that. But, the real battlefield is essentially the mind of people who can make big decisions. Their minds are really where this is going to be won or lost. But unfortunately, people in Russia don't seem to understand that, even the ones with great power. So, I think Russia's going to continue on this vector, and probably when I'm even older and have even less hair on top of my head and even less teeth, I'll be still forced to answer the question as to how do I think the American people and the Russian people can find peace together. So that's all I've got for today, friends. So let's go to your questions. And if you want to talk to me, you can use the oh my gosh, there are people that raise their hand functions. First person is going to be Moscow Settlers. Well, I think I know who this really is behind the moniker Moscow Settlers. Hello, sir.
Hey, Tim.
Hey.
Just wanted to say hello and that we missed you at the Thanksgiving gathering.
Yeah, dude. I kind of wouldn't want to talk about this on air, but I don't want to make up any lies. I'm in not the best psychological position right now. If it ain't work, if it doesn't put money on the table, I can't do it, man. I'm in full hermit mode. I am removed from human society. As I tell people on this
Oh,
program all the time, strange man who lives in the woods, and that's my game, and that's what I'm sticking to. So.
all right. Well, I just wanted to say hello and take care of yourself.
Oh, all the best, man, and it's a good hello to you. I hope you had a great time, and again,
Yeah, we
happy.
did.
Yeah. So what? How did that all go? Because one thing is maybe some people might be curious about like what the whole. I don't know if expat community might be the proper term for it, but like, what was this event? Tell people about it because they might be willing to attend because they have far less psychological problems than I do.
It's Americans living in Russia. I don't know their Telegram channel. Well, that's what it is, but I don't know what the what the link is. I forget.
Here, will you tell, and I'll try to find it.
Yeah, Americans living in Russia, and this year they did a nice Fourth of July gathering in Moscow, and then they had one for Thanksgiving. So it's nice. It just gets people together, and not just Americans, but Russians and people from other countries. It's really nice, and you get to network and meet people who are living here. A lot of interesting stories, good food, good music.
Oh,
So I thought I might see you there.
all right. Well, man, I don't know. I think for the foreseeable future, like, look, I have to put it this way. Uh, my fuse is way too short, man. I've almost gotten in some real major trouble over the last year. So I'm just trying to kind of keep myself in good state here because I'm too
Gotcha.
cranky. But anyways, the group is called in Telegram. So if you're looking at the Tim Kirby Russia Hardcore, you can see that the Telegram live stream starts in 15 minutes. That classic photo that I often put up before live stream. If you look under that, I put a comment, and the group is called American Community in Russia. One word, American
That's it.
Community in Russia. Yes, that is it.
That's it.
So,
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to say a quick hello, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
oh yeah, I'm always happy to talk to you, man. All the best, and thanks for sharing a lot of stuff in the American Village group. Super appreciated. All the best, dude.
Yeah. If it gets annoying, just let me know.
Nah, so far so good. All the best, man.
All right, brother.
So someone else wanted to talk. Why did you put your hand down? Wasn't that Anne? Didn't you want to talk, Anne? You do. Okay. And she did, and she did. And you should be live in theory.
Okay, okay, Tim, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So first of all,
Mhm.
what you're doing is great, and what you're doing is needed. I read a lot. I think I know a lot about this international stuff. So let me tell you my four main points to see if they'll help you.
All right, let's do
Um,
it.
num- okay, number one, you hit it. The trend right now around the world is a populism versus globalism trend. This is the fight. And the way to get to the populism is to increase communication. And that's what you're doing, whether it's written or verbal or whatever, but communicate, communicate, communicate. You can't communicate enough. So that is the only way to fight globalism. Secondly, I want to say that this movement against Russia is extremely historic. It goes way back into the 18th century, the 1700s. St. Petersburg was built to rival Versailles, and
Mm-hmm.
it did. It did. I mean, people spoke French in old Russia, the aristocracy time. They spoke French. So it was built to rival Versailles. And if you read the book, somehow the aristocracy of Europe had their nose up a little bit against the aristocracy of Russia. And my own conjecture why that is two reasons. One, Russia has the hugest landmass, and people are jealous, in those circles. And number two, Russians do tend to be a bit more emotional, spiritual than some others, and that could be seen as a weakness.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
if if you read, yeah, you can write this down. If you if you read a lot, the aggressions against Russia, Russophobia, is deliberate. It has always been deliberate and based on money, not based on moral objections or cultural or anything. Pure money and greed. Read it. Read a lot of things. Get the common element in all those documentaries and all those books. Elephants in the room. It's a common thing. And
Yeah.
if you
Well,
do
just
that,
to
you
make
will.
you do a pause there, one thing I can't tell you is that's kind of goes back to what I was saying just previously about how when a lot of these really influential and powerful people say about, like Obama, for example, talked about American exceptionalism, and I personally don't think he actually believes in that, but that's again, he's sort of using that language of like the common masses, to get them to be antagonistic towards other people or to do what he wants. I think it's kind of that logic is going over where deeply, maybe not so much completely about the money, but a lot of times when stuff's about the money, it gets masked within all this other stuff, like American exceptionalism, can be this excuse that allows the military industrial complex to pay off big for certain people. You know what I mean? We can even see that in things that are very minor. I had a good example in my head and it just vanished. No. Um, yeah, I'll have to try to think of it again. But that was a pretty good one about the military industrial complex. So, but anyways, continue on.
Yeah, absolutely true. In terms of American exceptionalism, I would venture to say that every country has exceptionalism. Nobody
Mm,
knows what ordinary, the heroic things every ordinary person does.
no.
So the only thing exceptional about America was the opportunity for individuals historically to call the shots.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only exceptional thing. But individuals throughout the world are exceptional. Um, and I want to add, before I finish point two, that when you do read and get well informed, you'll see that the people who deliberately did all this for money, there is lots of psychopathology in there, pure psychopathology,
Mm-hmm.
which was not understood in those days. It wasn't a science in
Yeah,
those
but to
days.
be honest, human psychology really isn't implemented into politics. On some level, I'm sure it is with when you get into like voting manipulation and all that. But when we mostly, even the news, us people, even some of the more elite people, human psychology never factors into any of it, which is a big missing gap. But anyways,
Yeah, it's a missing gap. But when people have a gun to their head or no food, and thrown in jail, etc., that affects psychology. And the people who inflict that are the psychopaths. And that's throughout history. If it's important to identify that. It really is. So I mentioned can't communicate enough. There is no Russian media is blocked. I think in many parts of the world,
mm-hmm.
and that is too bad. That is a problem. And then my fourth and last point, and we can discuss more any of those things. But you mentioned people with money, and here's a little bit where psychopathology comes in. There are people who live only for money, and
Mm-hmm.
their whole psychology is wrapped around money. So they never have enough, and they're threatened by anyone else who has it or another class that has it. And in this day and age, I would venture to say I think the figures are that 63 or so people have as much money as half of the globe. and
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't think that engenders psychopathology, you have to think again. So it is populism versus some of these sickos, and it will be the power of the masses
Mm-hmm.
against
Well, I don't
those.
know. If you mean that certain people have the vast majority of the wealth, well, that's been throughout all of human history. But go
Well,
look at the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. I mean, that sort of pyramidal, ironically pyramidal. I bring up Egypt, but that sort of pyramidal structure of society that's been throughout all of human history. That's, I think, something that's inescapable. That's just the way it
well,
is.
there you go. And in some ways, they want to go back. in some ways of that structure, but
No,
what
no, I'm
you
saying that structure
did,
is the only structure. There is no
well,
structure other than sort of elite in control of things. There really isn't any examples of anything sort of other than that.
well, the only difference between that is that's throughout history and especially recent times, the middle class has evolved a huge amount of power. That didn't
Mm.
exist in the old days. The middle class has huge power, and you're dependent on the middle class for pillars of morality. You really are.
Wait,
You
wait,
really
wait.
are.
Well, what do you mean? What kind of power does each? Okay, so if we're talking about like the, let's just be a little bit more specific, the American middle class. What kind of power does the American middle class actually possess, in your opinion? What are you talking about?
Right. Well, we had it. We had it completely through elections. We had it. We had a lot of it through elections,
Well,
and that's on a local scale
yeah.
too. Local, state, federal. Um,
Well, no, actually, I would
so
argue not because again, you have the choice between essentially two parties, and maybe there might be some independents, but it's hard for them to get on the ballot. Your electoral choices aren't particularly wonderful, and when you elect someone, you don't really have any means of making them do what you want. So I would say that having this grand sort of electoral meatiness, it's very limited in its effect. I wouldn't really say that that gave the middle class the power. You know.
Well, of course, things were hidden and things were told untruthfully. And again, it goes back to the progress that we make is more communication, more abilities through the internet,
Mm-hmm.
more media. And today, what the globalists are facing is the power of the media.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why what you do is so important.
Well,
And
well.
and I suggest that you branch out and ask people to help you branch out. Um, but that's the only hope.
Well, yeah. Well, about branching out, that's one thing where maybe there's some people. Well, there's some people. I know one. His name is Walkin Flores, who's much better at really organizing people, especially on a sort of nonprofit basis to get a lot of stuff done. He's good at that. I'm not. I have been trying for years, really since sort of the when it became in that the war in Ukraine would be sort of imminent. Like the when I heard about the big one that never happened when the Ukrainian army was supposed to do this one mass launched sort of assault on Donetsk in 2021, but it didn't happen. From about that point in time, I sort of knew that I sort of had the experience and I have the connections, and I know everyone, and they know me, and I'm sort of a trusted individual. And now would be the time to do some kind of like big budget media project here. And I hate to disappoint you, but despite the fact that I've talked to a lot of people with a lot of money, I have never been able to get that funded. Because trust me, if I was able to make as much money as I do now, or maybe more, just doing one thing, just info warring, I'd be happy to take on the role of Russia's Alex Jones here and make it a sort of a daily, lifetime, commitment. But unfortunately, uh, it's this expanding this Tim Kirby Russia universe is very difficult because it really depends on donations and yeah. It depends on donations or like too here's another thing. If tomorrow some sort of magic happened and I didn't have to pay a mortgage on the apartment for my kids, that could also really change the way I do things here because then I wouldn't have to work as much. So I'd love to expand this thing. I've tried. In fact, I have some amazing presentations about this, but no buyers, no buyers.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, we all have to work. All I can say
Yeah.
is just keep at it in a way that doesn't strain you or stress you too much. And when the time is right, something may happen. But seek and thou shalt find, as they say. So just keep on doing it in a pace that's comfortable. I think you've grown since I started listening. I
Mhm.
listen to a lot of things around the world because I like that.
Yeah.
And I think you've grown in your show. So keep doing it. And
Well, thank you very much. I
yeah.
can say I'm on all the Ukrainian hit lists, but then again, so are thousands of other
Oh
people.
no.
But
Are you serious? Are you serious?
oh, of course.
I,
But there's also like people who are there are also like children, like 10-year-olds and stuff on those lists too. But seriously, yeah, I'm actually a fairly somewhat uh for be I don't know. I don't even know how to describe myself. On the one hand, I'm a complete bum. On the other hand, I'm extremely influential. So I don't really even know what to say. I'm both at the same time. I'm a walking contradiction here. So yeah.
well, keep going. I'll send you literature or documentary references as I can,
Yeah.
and you might glean some pearls from there. But there's not enough hours in the day
Mhm.
to learn all this stuff. But it's coming out. It is coming out. So hang in there.
All
But
right.
it's been historic, and it's the same kind of people who have done it historically.
All right. Very good.
Same people.
Thank you for the call and thank you for the high praise. I'm going to let you go here, but that kind of helps out. But then again, I don't want to kiss my own butt here. I don't do live streams to talk about how awesome I am. That is boring. It's Tim Kirby Russia because you're hearing about things related to Russia from Tim Kirby, not because Tim Kirby is Russia or something absurd like that. No, 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 no. So anyways, if someone else wants to raise their hand and call in, they can. I am going to read some comments. Christopher is responding to the thing I posted about Lloyd Austin. Where is he getting the money? I mean, sure, Army Ordnance, Lake City can ramp up if ordered, but the private factories won't add capacity unless paid to. About how now Lloyd Austin says they're going to quadruple their ability to produce shells, which I think is very suspect. Christopher agrees with me and explains why he thinks it's suspect better than with my emotional gut reaction. Anyways, Artyom, in Russia, everyone is welcome except LGBT and Roma. Wow. I guess that was probably a comment under some other post, but he talks about who's welcome in Russia. I don't know about that, Artyom. When we did that big... I was just telling someone about this the other day. We did this documentary about the lives of black people in Russia. And we did, I think it was 7 people, and it was either 4 people who were born here and 3 who moved, or maybe it was 3 and 4, I don't know. But it was, I believe, 7 people in total. And I know YouTube hates when you mention this topic, so I'll have to be gentle about it. The people who came here as adults, who came as like diplomats or like the wife of some like famous doctor who happened to be black, they seem to be pretty happy with Moscow, and especially Moscow. Whereas, ooh, the people who grew up here because their mom happened to spend one night with a particular foreign gentleman, ooh, they all mentioned, how do you say this in YouTube-friendly, polite terms, ending their problem in a very radical way. A bad idea, not a good solution. It's a very definite and final particular solution to that problem. I'll put it that way. All of them mentioned that. So I don't know if people who are African feel that welcome, but I'll tell you this much. He is right that the LGBT are definitely despised, and so are gypsies. By Roma, he means gypsies. People here really also do not like gypsies, but not like in Poland or Hungary. Talk to someone in Poland or Hungary. Wow, they the hatred of gypsies runs deep over there. So, ironically, for some reason, on our American football team, when we do thrusts, not in the sexual sense, like the thrust where you could go yeah, and you put like one leg in front of the other and you lean down on your knees, kind of doing thrusts. For some reason, the command for it is Gypsy Woman. So I don't know where that comes from, but so you always hear Tsiganka, Tsiganka, Tsiganka when we do the sort of march across the field. So where that comes from, I don't know. Christopher continues. Woke U.S. troops turn back from their invasion of Russia, of Russian Diomede Island after massive casualties caused by polar bear attacks. Polar bears thank Joe Biden for the free meal. I don't even know what's going on, Christopher. That's funny, but I don't quite know what you're getting at there. But yeah, it would be kind of interesting to see what woke people would do if they actually had to go to war. I'm assuming break or collapse. Yeah. Adding a Cossack regiment to Sherman's army would have been really cool for the North. Maybe, I don't know. But remember about Sherman burning the his march to the sea of burning the South. Remember that violates Russian sort of military ethics. So I don't know how the Cossacks would have felt about that, especially when in theory, it's the U.S. Civil War faced the same civil war or same sort of civil war that we're in here in Russia. It's like the Russians are saying, Ukrainians, you're kind of like our Southerners. No, we're not. We're completely different, and we hate you, and you're subhuman. You're not subhuman. You're exactly the same thing as us. So you're also subhuman? It's like that thing with the North and the South. It's the same thing. It's the North says, we are one country, and the South says, we are not one country. God dang, we're different. We have a peculiar institution and peculiar institutions, and gosh dang. So, I don't know. Maybe a Cossack regiment would be kind of like, burning down everyone's home. This bloody march to the sea. I don't know. There might be some mixed feelings on that one. Let's see. Tim, thank you. You nailed it about the ultra-rich mentality. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Martinez. I do think that mentality is really a core aspect of the way people think. And remember, maybe this is just my bias because as someone who works in the media, the whole thing about if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, someone who works in the media, everything is always about it's about the ideas and the sending of the messages and all this stuff. And that's probably because I work in this, if I were, I don't know, a doctor, maybe I'd have a very different perception about the way the world works. Here's a video shared. Rabbi destroys Zionism's anti-Semitism with Yakov Shapiro. Okay. I've never met Yakov Shapiro, but Yakov is a fun name. That is Jacob in Slavic languages. Ukraine passes there's the irony. Ukraine passes LGBTQ plus whatever hate speech ban and big step for equality. Russian forces raid gay clubs after banning LGBTQ movement and extremist organization. There's that contrast. That's so crazy that I'm gonna share it. That's a big contrast right there. That's a big contrast right there, boy. Oh, someone shared something from American Majority. Oh, I shared that. I don't even remember sharing that. Russia limits women's access to abortion, citing demographic changes. I guess I shared that. What am I doing? I don't even know what I'm sharing. Oh, my God. Then again, American Majority is a really good group. They don't post much, but when they do, mwah, you should probably sign up to that group. It's pretty good. Yes, it means they're planning for more longer wars. Now what's going on? People just hypocritical posts. Okay. Tim, send Tim money so he can escape the woods. Nah, it's not about escaping the woods, man. It's about escaping the necessity to just constantly work, all the time. And anytime you're not working, you feel guilty about not working because you're screwing over your children and being worried about retirement and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot to do with that. There's also, I'll put it this way, there's a certain reward that I will get when all this gets done, and that reward is real juicy. And if it takes too long, I will not get the reward. So yeah. So if anyone does want to do a Boosty thing, let me find Boosty. It should be over here. It should, but it's not. Amazing. Man. Okay, my page. And again, seriously, there are starting to become some costs involved with the American Village. So when I tell this that this is help support both Tim and the American Village. When I tell you there's costs coming up with this, I ain't kidding. And it definitely helps having someone paid off. So that's another thing. My money gets a little bit drained by this American Village because we got to get this thing going. Got to get it, get it running, and it's full of paperwork and arguing with people about said paperwork. Anyways, what other comments do we have? If someone has their hand up, they can talk. No one does. So then let's just finish up with the comments. Antonios, hi Antonios. I know you, Antonios. I know you've wanted to talk for a while. We'll get to that, man. We'll get to that. Romanians are not particularly polite about Tsigane. Oh, so they're Tsigane. Wow. But Greece has a lot of them as well. In the late decades, we have Bulgarian and Romanian ones coming to settle due to EU border freedom. Anyway, here, they had been interwoven in traditional culture as musicians. Same thing in Russia. I do believe, which is kind of weird, the weird other side of Vladimir Putin is that I believe like his favorite musical performing group. Like if he could have any like music group perform at some sort of event, it's gonna be like some sort of like the Russian gypsy dancers. I'm pretty sure that is. I'm not exaggerating that. He really is into that. So hey, you know, I guess the most important person in Russia likes them being here. However, the whole thing about I'll put it this way, because in Russian culture, begging is really, really looked down on, like super ultra looked down on. And they're kind of a culture of beggars, and so that's probably where a lot of this comes from. Also, the whole thing about potentially drugging their kids and stuff, that might be true. Are there Tsigani settlements in Russia? Not really. I've never seen one. I have seen gypsies, for sure, but I've never seen some sort of place where they're. So I think there's just really not that many, or they were sort of assimilated. Some sort of because I can't tell you one thing though. I've met a couple men who are like the ancestors of gypsies, and all of them are a lot more like like the negative like Italian stereotype. The guys are really, or maybe I don't know, Central American. That like the men there get really fired up and passionate about everything and smash some sort of like plate on the floor, and they have 50 million divorces. That's kind of how every guy with gypsy genetics is that I've met. They get all really emotionally wound up, especially in their relationships. So maybe there is some sort of little genetic strain there, or cultural remnant, even if their name doesn't really sound very Romany or whatever it is. Not getting a reward is sad. Yes, it is. Not a bribe. It's a reward that's something abstract that I can't really talk about. It's not a payment. It's not something material. It's something more so than that. So, if you're interested about etymology, I'll message you in every country. Oh, etymology. That's something for the dictionaries and all that. Anyways, does anyone have their hand raised? Yes, Anne wants to come back. Anne. But we're going to go then, Ann, because you already talked. So you just say what you're going to say, and then we're going to vanish.
Yeah, very, very quick, but very important. I think I told you that, back in aristocratic times, the reasons that maybe Russia was snubbed, I had mentioned being more emotional, and that was viewed as a weakness. I want to add that I think it's the opposite nowadays. It is not a weakness. It is, as a matter of fact, a moral strength. But in those days, it was different. The British have this pompous, cold style.
Yeah.
Very different from Russians. So.
I don't know. Russians are pretty cold on the surface themselves. I don't know about that. Especially people back in the old days when life was harsher. I don't know. I'm not so sure about that.
I see. Okay. Anyway, I wanted to add that I do not view that as a weakness, and I think in fact you should nurture that as a strength.
Well, that's a very, I'll put it this way, that is a very gender-based thing. I'll tell you that, this much, is if you come across as a man as very emotional, you really lose the respect of most other men. Maybe there's certain cultures that aren't that way, but even in the West where we're supposed to be that way, like, I'll put it this way, in man world, that's not the best policy.
Well, I think Lavrov, contrast Lavrov with a Brit or Lavrov with Blinken,
No.
Look at the difference there.
Well, Lavrov speaks very officially and somewhat coldly and very to the point. Whereas I think most of the sort of Western people they're in there like Hey guys, I'm your used car salesman in the U.S. State Department. How are you doing there, buddy? Okay, let's talk about peace while we're preparing for war. They've got that sort of thing going. You know what I mean? they've got that thing all set up, and on the one hand, it's emotional, but it's also kind of fake. So it's kind of hard to really say because when the emotions are dishonest, then it's more like an act, and who knows what's going on in their mind. But I do know one thing, that Russians interpret that as being weak, a major sign of weakness. And that's why if you're a man in Russia, so you're a woman, so you're exempt from this. If you're a man in Russia, the overwhelming stereotype of you're a Westerner is that you're a complete pansy. That you are just a helpless, mama's boy, pansy, limp-wristed nothing. And it's because of that more emotional way of that people do everything in the media. It all comes from that.
Okay.
All right. Sorry to argue, but the thing is, I'm gonna let you go there. But the thing is one thing is, I know I know a lot of times when you talk to women that women really see emotions as a good thing, and I know it's hard for you ladies to understand, but when you cross the line and you live in man world, it is really the exact opposite. There is an online psychiatrist who is really interesting because he is very blunt. I cannot remember his name, but I'll sure I could find him. And he said that the difference between there's something that really opened my eyes. The problem is I'm already in my 40s and it's way too late. I wish I would have known this when I was 14. Is that the concept of loyalty is very different between men and women. And he said, because he's a man, he's like, men, we sort of understand what loyalty is. But if you put it in terms of gender, the difference is the exact opposite. Women or men, the idea of loyalty for men is going against your feelings. It is going out to shovel snow for the family when you don't want to. It is working a job you might not want to work because you got to provide for the family. Everything about being sort of this idea of loyalty or loyalty to your country is it's contributing, it's putting in effort, maybe doing a lot of stuff you don't want to do, but you have to do it because, you're loyal to the side, your family or your wife, your country or whatever. And he said the problem is that women are loyal to their emotions. And that's where we also see a lot of, especially in Russia. Now I see that that's really what causes all the divorces here. Because women really put all their chips down on their feelings. And they trust their feelings really unquestioningly. Women believe in their intuition. Because remember, the whole thing about there's female intuition. Is there male intuition? No. Because you ladies really believe and you are loyal to your feelings. If your feelings tell you something, women are convinced that they are very truthful. They are filled with truth. And if they're going to take action, it should be based on their feelings. And that's why there's a lot of divorces in Russia. Because Russian women believe that. They have never thought for even a second to take action that is in contrast to their feelings. Not for one frickin' second. So, there you go. We're going to end on a little bit of a manosphere red pill talk. But, sorry, I just had to bring that one up there because I think it's it is not helpful for men to ever hear from women that they should be emotional because that is such a losing proposition when you have to do things with other men. It does not work. I'm sorry. It does not work. Anyways, guys, I will talk to you later, and thank you for all the wonderful words of encouragement.